we now want to speak to the person who's in charge of industrialization and entrepreneurship in the country, the Cabinet Secretary for Industrialization, Adan Mohammed, joining us from our town studio. Good afternoon, and thank you for making the time to be with us today. We understand you have a busy schedule. We appreciate the time. Bonasias, talk to us about the importance of entrepreneurship in spurring economic growth. It's definitely something we're all talking about now. But perhaps you could make the linkages for us between entrepreneurship and growth of the economy in general for everybody.
Well, entrepreneurship is going to be the future of any economy, including ourselves here in Kenya. And many of the businesses that you see today that have proven to be successful all started as small startups and transitioned to what they are today. So for that reason, the future of any economy, especially those that are private sector led like ours, would have to invest and create more players, in the entrepreneurship value chain, so that people can start businesses, develop ideas, bring them to market, and be able to one day turn into the Coca-Colas, the IBMs, the BATs, so that they are likely to look back and say, this is where we started. So this is really an exciting opportunity for us to have such a globally important conference on entrepreneurship to be happening here in Kenya.
All right, and let's talk about the government for a moment. We've been having various town hall meetings across universities, and they're providing opportunities for entrepreneurs to grow. What comes out of that is that the government needs to be able to use the services more of the entrepreneurs, and whether the government is keeping up with the level at which entrepreneurs are growing. So I'd like to ask you about that, whether the government is in tandem with entrepreneurs in the country, and indeed also in terms of providing an enabling environment for entrepreneurship.
Well, the various activities across the country where entrepreneurs are beginning to do activities is something that the government is paying a lot of attention to. You may recall recently, about a month ago, His Excellency the President was at Strathmore Business School meeting a number of private sector entrepreneurs, where Strathmore Business School is hosting the entrepreneurs in that particular place. And there are many others in other universities. We have the NILAB and others, all of who are trying to make sure that they can provide support to the entrepreneurs. Now, obviously when people are starting businesses, it's not as easy as it sounds. Many people have great ideas, but converting that into real business is what always proves to be a challenge. And the one most significant of that, even much more than access to finance, which I think a lot of people are complaining about at that early stage, is access to market. And what the government has done very, very proactively is to make sure that we create access for these people, small and medium-sized businesses that are transitioning to big businesses, by making sure that over 30% of government procurement is actually restricted for people who are young, women and people with disabilities, as a way of nurturing this talent. People bring in ideas and they just need the market. So for example, we have people who have started making pencils out of recycled papers. We have people who are introducing softwares, supply of things to governments, and goods as well. So the key thing is really to understand funding. There's a lot that the government is doing through a lot of agencies like Uwezo Fund, Women Fund, Youth Fund, ICDC, one of the government parastatals, Kenya Industrial Estate. These are all organizations that the government have made possible and funded as a way of supporting people who are starting their businesses. So we are very much on top of what we need to do. But always there has to be room for improvement, and an opportunity like this Global Entrepreneurship Summit really gives us a chance to reflect more. What is working, what can we do more of, and what is actually not working from the entrepreneur's point of view. So a lot is being done. The private entrepreneurs are hearing, the government is paying a lot of attention, but we want to be able to reinforce most of what we are doing following such an important summit on the global platform.
All right, and you've talked about this being a great opportunity for us to audit ourselves in terms of where we are with entrepreneurship in the country. And you mentioned we will look at what's working, what's not, what we need to do more of. I'm curious, has your ministry thought of what the challenges are? Some talk about the low uptake of funds like Uwezo, but what more do you think we need to do to just continue to bridge the gap?
Well, basically, the entrepreneurship is an area that has a lot of complexities. And if you look and talk to a lot of our young people who are starting businesses, you ask them what are some of the issues that they face. And really, the first thing is, are there sufficient ideas that are out and about? And we're very happy as a country to be able to say we have made some global transitions in introducing new innovations in the world, for example, in the area like M-Pesa and others. So within the technology area, a lot of ideas are coming in. But there are things that we feel are big challenges, will take time to fix. So areas like access to finance. And I think eventually private capital, investors who can put money with these entrepreneurs is quite important. And today there's a lot of risk averseness that we see financial institutions having towards startups and new businesses. And that is where really private equity funds, venture capital, fill that void. And I'm very pleased to say that the level of interest from private equity funds that are targeting private entrepreneurs in markets like ours is increasing. Today there are over 50 private equity funds that are operating in Kenya serving the East African market. And there are over 80 private equity funds out there who have expressed interest in supporting ventures in this particular market. But aside from that, I think there are the softer issues like managerial capability. Do people have enough experience and support to actually get their business from idea stage into small business and transition into large? These are all things that require mentoring, that require a very strong ecosystem that supports these people. And what we have seen is for capacity facilities like iHub, NILAB, and many others are doing that to a large extent. And I think we now want to see how we can broaden that as government by providing some support directly to be able to accommodate more people. And many countries have gone through these kind of issues and challenges, and one of the key outcomes of this conference is to really pick up some of the good lessons that have worked in some other countries in other parts of the world for us to take forward.
All right, we talk a lot about government, but the private sector is also has a big role to play in terms of entrepreneurship. Bonasias, I was reading an article talking about the position of an entrepreneur in the C-suite and just having them sort of build innovation within private companies and private sector and private organizations. And we've seen the collaboration between Safaricom and Strathmore Business School with the iLab Africa. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on the role of the private sector and what you would want them to do more of to spur entrepreneurship in the country.
First of all, that's a really good point. The government's role to a large extent is to provide an environment that, be it through policies or laws or regulations, that gives really conducive environment for entrepreneurship to thrive. And we are making some good progress in that, registering businesses today, enabling people to get connection to electricity, for example. Companies that get into distress, insolvency laws are being reviewed at the moment. So we're making it easy for people to operate, especially for the small businesses and startups. I think where the big opportunity for making entrepreneurship succeed is very much the private sector looking at this much more differently from what we have seen before. If you look at many of the big ideas today, including things like M-Pesa, they started as simple ideas, but some bold steps were taken by private sector players. And what I think we'd like to see more of is for people, especially big businesses, to invest a certain amount of capital towards innovation. And I think if you look at many big companies, financial statements, brochures, or strategies, they talk about dedicating some funds to innovation. But I think that needs to be much more bullish, fast-tracked, as opposed to just having it as ideas. The financial institutions in our country have for a long time been really averse towards supporting startups or new ventures or small and medium-sized businesses. I think the time has come now that, you know, commercial banks, private equity fund, you know, angel investors where wealthy individuals can actually come in and support entrepreneurs will all pool together in supporting these people. So the issue is we are much more aware of entrepreneurship, what it can do today than we were 5-10 years ago.
Okay.
And so as a country we are making the right steps, moving in the right direction. We just need to do more of, and I'm very encouraged that we should be able to look back 10 years, 5 years from now and see that some of the steps we've taken have really yielded fruits.
All right. Finally, before I let you go, we were at Strathmore Business School yesterday. We had a forum there, and we had nominated Member of Parliament Johnson Sakaja, whom, as you know, has been pushing for youth inclusion in government contracts and indeed in employment as well. Now, this is what he had to say, that beyond the Global Entrepreneurship Summit, that Kenya needs to have its own summit and just take a look at what we're doing locally. And he was proposing a national summit and also taking it down to the counties as a way of carrying on with the momentum locally. So that it's not just about President Obama's visit and once he's gone, what we need to do. What are your thoughts on that, about having our own national conversation? This is a global one, and auditing where we are with entrepreneurship as a means towards keeping the momentum going with this discussion in the country?
Well, in terms of providing support to the youth and making them succeed in their business, as I say, the government has made it possible for over 30% of government procurements to be dedicated towards supporting youth, women, and people with disabilities. Now, of course, that we may not have achieved that 30%, but a lot is being done in areas of registration, in enabling people to have much more access to finance, whether it's discounting local purchase orders through commercial banks, or indeed people borrowing money as a way of delivering or executing on a program. What I think we have in Kenya is we've got a number of activities that are run by different business schools, by the private sector, by corporations such as Safaricom that are really geared towards supporting entrepreneurship. The government is also, as I mentioned earlier on, doing a lot in its own right. What I think we need to do is to see how we can pool all the different funds that the government is today deploying towards supporting the young people and entrepreneurs into one central fund which can be managed centrally with a view to having measurables, targets that we can actually monitor on a regular basis. So summits such as this have been ongoing. As I mentioned, we had our own president and the private sector at Strathmore Business School about a month or so ago. Only yesterday, our president launched a pre-GES summit that covers over 580 entrepreneurs that participated. But I think it will not be a mistake for us to start thinking about maybe we need to have a regular annual dialogues on how much progress we are making in this particular area by getting the private sector initiatives, the government initiatives all aligned and be able to have some expected measurable deliverables at the end of every year.
Thank you. That's a great point to end our discussion. We thank you again for your time. Cabinet Secretary Industrialization Adan Mohammed joining us live here on KTN's News Desk from our town studios, talking about pooling funds and talking about perhaps an annual conversation on entrepreneurship to keep the momentum going on this particular topic. I'd like us to stick